So before we get started, if you have a cell phone, please either silence it or turn it off. I will call the regular City Commission meeting of Oregon City to order for Wednesday, April 4th, 2018. There was somebody over there. If you'll please, a roll call, please.
Commissioner Shaw.
Here.
Commission President Mengelberg is en route. Commissioner Ide. Here. Commissioner O'Donnell.
Here.
Mayor Holliday.
Here. If you'll all please rise and join me in the flag salute. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. 3A, 18-179, proclamation for Oregon City Arbor Day on Saturday, April 7th. Mr. Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. You have before you a proclamation prepared for information highlighting our Arbor Day event this coming Saturday. Oregon City is celebrating its 6th year, earning the Tree City USA designation and has received a Growth Award. So our Oregon City Enhancement Day event scheduled for Saturday is a combined Arbor Day and Earth Day event scheduled for April 7th from 9 a.m. to 12 noon at the McLaughlin Promenade. We will be removing invasives, planting trees, shrubs, and doing general beautification at the site. Those who have not already pre-registered are welcome to pre-register on the Oregon City website to receive a free t-shirt. We'll have booths set up and free snacks for those that participate.
Is that it?
That is it.
Okay, so I'll read the proclamation. Whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed that to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for the planting of trees, and whereas the holiday called Arbor Day was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska, and whereas Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world, and whereas trees can reduce the erosion of our precious topsoil by wind and water, cut heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, clean the air, produce oxygen, and provide habitat for wildlife, and whereas trees are a renewable resource giving us paper, wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, and countless other wood products, and whereas trees in our city increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of the business areas, and beautify our community, and whereas trees are a source of joy and spiritual renewal, and whereas the city and our Arbor Day partners work together throughout the year to plant trees and educate the community about the importance of urban forestry, and whereas in 2018, Oregon City will celebrate its 6th year with a Growth Award as a Tree City USA, now therefore I, Dan Holliday, Mayor of Oregon City, do proclaim April 7th, 2018 as Arbor Day in Oregon City and urge all citizens to celebrate Arbor Day, support the efforts to protect our trees, woodlands, and to plant and care for trees to promote the well-being of this and future generations. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand this 4th day of April, 2018, Dan Holliday, Mayor. Very good. Okay, citizen comment. I got to go back to my other screen here.
Betty.
Is that all we got? Betty Mom? Commissioner Betty Mom? Sorry.
That's it, just me. So, Betty Mom, Oregon City. I want everybody to know that I am speaking for Betty Mom, nobody else. Nobody has influenced me with my statement. Nobody has written anything for me with my statement, okay? So at your last meeting, the Barkley Hills Neighborhood Association was brought into the conversation. Accusations were made. And since I'm chair of that neighborhood, I thought I would kind of clarify things. Ms. Law says that there is no representation because there was a conflict of interest. I want you to know I have no money from Free on the Outside, nor do I own any property on Roosevelt Street. There is no conflict of interest. What happens at the neighborhood association is someone makes a motion, is seconded, and then every member votes whether to bring it forward or not. That has not happened. We have people that have never been to the neighborhood association before, so I'm hopeful they'll come back and they'll understand a little bit better about the rules. So that's the neighborhood stuff. Now for the Betty Mum stuff. And again, nobody wrote this for me. I've been accused of so many things on Nextdoor. So many lies have been said. And it was a very, very sad meeting that we had in March because one individual is manipulating a lot of neighbors in our neighborhood and got all these neighbors riled up and had them all come to a meeting to recall me as chair. It failed, but it went forth. So after that, we had 2 resignations. One was the vice chair, one was the secretary. Both of these young men, old men, I don't know, men, are very, very kind, and they wanted to be involved in the city. And I would ask that maybe one of the commissioners would reach out by calling and saying, you know, I understand things didn't go well at the neighborhood, but how about if you look at getting involved in this? Because I think these guys would be really, really good to be involved in our city. There's been so many things happen with neighborhoods lately. It's just, we have to get back to, we are a neighborhood. We don't hold power like the governor does.
Your red light's on.
Oh, I've got to go. Sorry. Anyways, don't believe everything online. If I put online, Nancy, you're Marie, I know you're Marie and you came from the Dalles.
Your red light's still on.
Is that a lie? No, I put it on social media, so it's true, right?
Thank you, Commissioner.
All right. I could go on.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Anybody else for citizen comment? Then we'll move on. Is everybody okay with the agenda?
Yes.
I am going to make an executive decision. We're going to move 6C. We're going to trade places with 6B and 6C. So we're going to take 6C before 6B. That way, Mr. Fowler and his folks don't have to sit through an hour-long discussion about lot averaging. So moving right along, public hearing, PC 18-052.
51,
What?
51, 6C?
No, we're going A first.
Oh, I didn't know that, okay.
PC 18-052, AP 1701, and AP 1702, appeal of Historic Review Board's June 27, 2017 approval with conditions of HR 17-04, Historic Review for a new public works operation facility in McLaughlin Conservation District. Ms. Turway.
Thank you very much. This past summer, the Historic Review Board reviewed an application for a public works facility in the McLaughlin Conservation District. Their decision was approval. That approval the city received 2 appeals on that approval, AP 1701 and AP 1702. The City Commission heard those appeals, and then on March 7th of this year, made a tentative decision to deny the appeals and uphold the Historic Review Board's decision. They asked that staff come back with final findings. We have those for you. They were posted in the agenda packet. The record is closed unless the commission chooses to reopen the record. I'm available to answer any questions that you have.
Is there a motion?
I will move to approve the denial of appeals presented through the planning files AP 17-01 and AP 1702, affirming the Historic Review Board's decision approving the planning file HR 1704 with condition.
Second.
Further discussion? Call roll, please.
Commissioner Shaw,
Aye.
Commissioner Ide,
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell,
Aye.
Mayor Holliday.
Aye, where's our voting button? The screen. There we go. Okay, motion carries. Moving on, we're gonna go to 6C, which is PC 18-051, remand of Land Use Board of Appeals court decision for planning files, PZ 15-01, comprehensive plan amendment, and ZC 15-03, zone change located near Beaver Creek Road and Highway 213. Ms. Turway.
Thank you very much. The city approved a comprehensive plan amendment and zone change for properties located near the northeast corner of Highway 213 and Beaver Creek Road with the planning files PZ 1501 and ZC 1503. That decision was appealed to the Land Use Board of Appeals, otherwise known as LUBA. LUBA remanded the decision back to the city for additional Goal 5 findings. LUBA found that the city must determine that the new uses allowed in the new zoning designation didn't conflict with Goal 5 resources, and if the new uses would result in increased volume and velocity of stormwater or the possibility of increased level of contaminants. So staff is recommending that decision was appealed to the Court of Appeals, and that appeal didn't go through. So now the courts have ordered us to do the remand of this application. Staff is asking that the City Commission remand this decision back to Planning Commission for the limited scope of those Goal 5 findings. And so the hearing would be limited to those issues only, not to everything else. They would make a tentative recommendation, and that would come back to the City Commission. And then your decision would be our final city decision. We are recommending that you remand this issue. The Planning Commission hearing date is tentatively scheduled for May 14th. With this hearing tonight, there's no public testimony or evidence that's needed because you're going to remand it for the specific issues of the Goal 5 findings, and there'll be an opportunity to talk about those issues both at the Planning Commission and then at the City Commission when it comes back to you.
Any questions for Ms. Turway? Is there a motion?
I move to remand the Land Use Board of Appeals court decision for planning files PZ 15-01, comprehensive plan amendment, and ZC 15-03, zone change located near Beaver Creek Road and Highway 213. And did you want that to a date certain?
Limited to the Goal 5.
Limited to the Goal 5. Do you want a date certain?
No,
Okay.
just the remand is fine.
Second.
Call roll, please.
Commissioner Shaw,
Aye.
Commissioner Ide,
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell,
Aye.
Mayor Holliday.
Aye.
It passes.
Okay, now we're back to 6B, PC 18-048, first reading of ordinance number 18-1005, amending the development sections of the Oregon City Municipal Code, including lot averaging, planning file L17-04. Ms. Turway.
Thank you, City Attorney William Kabaisman with our disclosures.
Good evening. Again, this is a legislative, not a quasi-judicial decision, so we don't have the laundry list from the statutes that we have to read. Again, for a legislative decision, you are making a policy decision about how certain things are going to be done in the city. For those purposes, you are to bring your biases and what you're interested in to determine what you think is in the best interest. There are no limitations on ex parte contacts. The only limitation is on conflict of interest and whether or not you would or could have a financial benefit based on the changes that are in front of you.
Benefit or detriment?
Detriment.
I have none.
I have none.
I have none.
Any challenges from the audience or any challenges to the jurisdiction of the City Commission? Seeing none?
All right, thank you very much. So this is the first time that you're seeing this package. We did have some work sessions I'll go through in just a moment to talk about these code amendments. They've been through the Planning Commission and now they're before you for the first time. The purpose of these is to look at lot averaging, which has been an issue that came up quite a bit this past year, as well as minor code cleanup and efficiency. So I'll go through each of these amendments rather quickly, but the majority of the amendments relates to lot averaging. It's been a long road getting here. Once we've identified the exact code language that we were going to move forward with in December, we've had a few meetings since then. We sent out a Measure 56 notice, which was a notice of these code amendments that went out to every property owner within the urban growth boundary, so the city and beyond. We've had a few work sessions with between you and the Planning Commission regarding this, so you can see on the screen where we're at. I'm going to go through the amendments one through one. We're going to talk about lot averaging first since it's the largest. The city currently has code to allow lot sizes to average within subdivisions. Subdivisions are land divisions of 4 or more lots. This code was originally adopted in 2004, though it's been tweaked since that time. Our current standard says that subdivisions as a whole, as long as they average the zoning designation minimum, so for R10, that would be 10,000 square feet, that some of the lots within the subdivision could be 20% less. There's no cap on that. So lots within the R10 zoning designation is provided the subdivision as a whole averages 10,000 square feet. You can have lots that are 8,000 square feet within that zoning designation. That does not affect the density. The density or number of houses within the subdivision stays the same regardless of the lot size. The lot sizes still have to comply with lot width, lot depth. They have to place streets where streets are required, lot coverage, setbacks, everything else still applies. We're just talking about purely the lot sizes itself. The proposed code amendment would add a few more parameters on that. Rather than reducing lots 20%, so in the example of R10, rather from going from 10,000 square feet to 8,000 square feet, lots would be limited to a 10% reduction. So in that case, they could go as small as 9,000 square feet. It also limits the percentages of lots that can be smaller than the zone minimum to 25%. And the third piece that's proposed is to limit the power line easements to be considered in lot averaging.
Are there any other easements other than the power line easement that might affect this?
The city has a variety of easements. Most commonly, we have public utility easements that go along the frontages. They can change throughout the platting process, and they're really within setbacks anyway. They're only 10 feet. So I could see why that wouldn't be included in this code amendment, because we're really not building anything there anyway. But there are a variety of easements that exist. The power line easement is on the list because it was a large item of discussion this past year. What we saw was subdivisions with a couple of really, really large lots because of power line easements. And we know in power line easements, or specifically the easements that we saw this year, you couldn't put a structure in it. And so those couple large lots were carrying the average for many, many smaller lots. On the screen, you'll see an approximate map of power line corridors. That's looking at aerial photos to come up with that map, so there may be some errors in that, but that's the general vicinity. You can see that most of the power line corridors are built out-ish or becoming built out with the development that we've seen this past couple years. Here's an example of what that power line corridor looks like. This was a subdivision, the R6 zoning designation. So what we saw was a high number of lots, smaller than 6,000 square feet, but they were only able to average because of these two larger lots with the power line easements in them. In this proposed scenario, you wouldn't be able to include those power line easements when you average the lots, which would mean that the other lots, you couldn't have as many so small.
So in this particular example, without the power line easements, how many lots could they have done?
Less than they have proposed.
How many less?
I don't know, I didn't figure that out. They would lose lots because you wouldn't be, even though you have such a large building lot, you wouldn't be able to count that when you average your lot size. I have other examples of lot averaging that I can flip to if you want to see the differences between lot averaging. Lot averaging was created for a variety of reasons, to provide flexibility within land divisions, incentives for different size houses and lots and price points and things like that. we also acknowledge that we have a lot of constraints within our world. We have a lot of funny shaped lots and particularly natural resources and other limitations. And so back in 2004, we prioritized things like streets and put in provisions to allow flexibility for the community. Are there any questions on lot averaging before I move on to the next?
Go ahead.
Okay. The next thing is that we amended some of our definitions. You can see the definitions on the screen. So we revised a couple. One is to comply with our Oregon Revised Statute for Family Daycare Facility. We added a definition of building. We added a definition for net leasable area.
So is building a noun or a verb? A building or building something?
A building.
Okay, thank you. Good question.
Yeah, that is a good question. How it it's building, a building. We amended to provide clarity in our code that in single family and mixed use zones that you could build, say on 7th or Malala, you could have a house with some commercial use below and then maybe 2 units up top. Before it specified multifamily as a permitted use, we wanted to be very explicitly clear that you can have 1 or 2 units, which is smaller than multifamily, if it's in conjunction with another use in the same building. So there's that amendment. We clarified some of our code language about disturbance within our natural resource overlay district. We had a disturbance code. It was basically 2 exemptions wrapped into one, so we separated it out and made it clear for you. In our decision-making process, we added a lot of clarity there. We had a summary chart that we updated, and we also updated our explanation language of how to process applications, how to calculate the number of days in a land use review, which refers to a chapter earlier in the Oregon City Municipal Code, and then also we clarified who has standing to appeal type 2 decisions. All of these code amendments are to provide clarity and transparency and certainty to both the public as well as development community and staff. We added a parking reduction. This was a code amendment that used to be in the code, but when we did our transportation system plan, we inadvertently removed the parking reduction, so we proposed to remove it. It's for a 10% reduction adjacent to a transit route or within 100 feet of a transit stop.
1,000 feet?
1,000 feet, what'd I say?
100.
100. Another 0 there. Or within a stop, near a stop distance. And so, what else did we do? We did some some clarification to our non-conforming chapter. So specifically, you have to do, when your site is non-conforming to our code, at a certain point in which you need to upgrade portions that are non-conforming. We wanted to provide explicit clarity as to what an expansion means. And so that means when you're building changes, when it gets bigger, or when you add more parking in a parking lot. So examples of this would be, say you have a parking lot and it doesn't have as many trees or shrubs in it because it was built long ago. If you make it bigger, then you're going to have to do a proportional improvement to that parking lot to add more landscaping. We amended our type 1 site plan. We had put in that demolitions only of a small demolitions could be a type 1 site plan design review, which implied that larger additions, more than a couple hundred square feet in most cases, would be a type 2 minor site plan design review, and so we clarified that. And then we also wanted to be explicitly clear that tree removal is a type 1 site plan design review before we said landscaping, and so we want to make very clear to the public. Speaking of landscaping, we made a couple of changes here, and some of these are a little more streamlining. We require a landscape architect to sign off on landscaping, so think commercial buildings, they're doing things that are different. The problem with landscape architects signing off on things, it is good. It can be very hard to find landscape architect who can sign off on 1 tree or 2 trees, and it could be very expensive too. We added an exemption if the tree species that they're proposing is already on our approved lists. So if it's already approved, we don't really need the landscape architect to say that the species is appropriate. Also, we provided a provision for if you're doing less than 500 square feet of landscaping, you don't necessarily need a landscape architect. You could also have a certified landscape designer, arborist, or nurseryman. All of those are professions with credentials to also sign off on the landscape plan. Again, this is meant to help facilitate minor landscaping improvements, and which we sort of have a little bit of a barrier there. And then we did a code cleanup where we had a 10% landscaping for major remodeling. Instead, we're just saying whatever the landscaping requirements are in your zoning designation should rule. For site plan design review, we did a few things. We clarified the process for mechanical units. There was a little bit of competing code language in there. We amended our material standard to allow chain link around stormwater facilities. We clarified a connection between development and non-conforming upgrades. We wanted people, and when they read our code, to be explicitly clear that they know that they have to go to the non-conforming chapter. We removed redundant sections and conflicting standards. We had some standards in there for light bulb types, which was a little specific. And for example, LED wasn't in there. And so it was a bit much, so we removed all of that. And then we also had some standard for light fixture design, which was very unclear anyway. So that's proposed for removal. One of the last things we did was update our communication facilities. So there was more, go figure, there was more court rulings regarding cell towers and communication facilities, and our code didn't exactly match. So basically the court rulings say that for expansions, and it defines expansions, you get to go through a quicker, easier process, and our code did not have that. Any questions or amendments to the code you'd like to discuss?
I have a number of questions.
Yeah.
Questions are specific to the parking reduction.
Yes.
I watched the planning commission meeting. I thought that the number was a quarter mile or 440 yards. You're telling me it's 1,000 feet?
Yeah, let me make sure that that's right before, but it should be. What would you like it to be?
A lot shorter than it's about to become. And then I need a definition of what constitutes a transit route.
We have, so it's, we have in there, let me read the code language for you. So the code language says the minimum required number of stalls may be reduced by up to 10% when the subject's property is adjacent to an existing or planned fixed public transit route. So that would include more than just TriMet. It would include CAT transit and some other things that we have locally, or within 1,000 feet of an existing or planned transit stop. We did talk about a quarter mile. 1,000 feet is similar to a quarter mile. I think that was the context of the conversation.
Okay. Is Malal Avenue a transit route?
Yes.
So what we're saying is from anything deemed a transit route, that would be anywhere a bus would run, apparently. Is that a correct definition?
Yes.
That perpendicular to that route, straight
Adjacent.
back from any part of that route, within 3 1/3 football fields, we can, in any direction, our parking is allowed to be reduced.
No, thank you, that's a really good clarification. So within the transit route, you have to be adjacent to the transit route to get the reduction, or within 1,000 feet of a stop. And there aren't that many stops. So it wouldn't, there's not as frequent of stops, so the stop 1,000 feet doesn't include all of the transit
So
routes.
what is the definition of adjacent?
Right.
Touching next to.
Okay.
So what's the depth allowable when it's just adjacent but not at a transit stop?
Just that front lot. If you're
Front lot.
2 lots back, you don't get it. And this is a 10% reduction for the minimum amount of parking they can certainly have between our minimum and maximum. And our parking is determined by the use on site. And so in general, it's a square footage based thing based on what the use is. So retail and office have a certain number, and if it's like a care facility, for example, like say it's a nursing home or retirement center, something like that, where there's less cars and it has lower numbers.
So this is an option.
It's an option, it's not a requirement. It is, if someone wants to reduce parking, they can choose to. We are not automatically reducing all parking.
Understood. I just wanted, I hope the law is as clear without an explanation that you just gave as in writing. I hope it's that clear, because when I read it, I thought it meant in any direction 1,000 feet back from any part of the transit route, but you're saying only at the stop only. And I didn't get that, but I'm not saying I didn't misread it either.
Yeah, no, thank you for bringing it up. I'm looking towards our city attorney.
Yeah, so as written, it's the minimum number of stalls may be reduced by up to 10% when the subject property is adjacent to an existing or planned fixed public transit route. So, the strip along adjacent, or within 1,000 feet of an existing or planned transit stop. And so the distinction is between the route, you get adjacent. A stop, you get 1,000 feet.
Okay.
Okay? Anything
That
else?
helps, thank you.
Anything else, Commissioner?
No.
Good.
I have some questions about the lot averaging. I'm looking at page 2 of the staff report. And under the summary of changes, and there's 3 bullets there that indicate what is proposed to be changed. And I'm proposing that we eliminate from the changes the first 2 bullets, the first one being lot sizes allotted to be 10% smaller than zone average rather than 20%, and cap the total number of lots that can be smaller than the zone average to 25%, and leave in the proposed changes the last bullet, which is remove power line easements from calculation of net developable area. And the reason that I am wanting to propose this change is that in just listening to all of the comments that have been made regarding this, to be fair to both sides of the coin here, I think that making a change like that might solve the issue. The power line easement in a recent application was the main issue that caused them to have more lots in the development, and it just appeared that to be something that we need to make an adjustment in our code to remove.
But to be clear, they didn't get more lots than the underlying zone allowed. They just got more lots than they would have been able, they got smaller lots than they would have normally been able to get.
Right, and that seemed to be the point of contention.
Right.
Yeah, so the provision you have proposed is retaining the existing language, but adding that bottom line under proposed. So the existing language, and then putting in that sentence that, as we have it in our code, that power line easements may not be considered in the lot averaging. And if they're not considered in lot averaging, then, for example, the subdivisions that we saw would have got less lots because they wouldn't have been able to average that portion of land to carry those smaller lots.
Right. Right.
I would be totally opposed to Commissioner Ide's position. And I would, because there was absolutely no lack of clarity on why this discussion came about or why seeking this amendment came about. I don't need to deal with investments or future values or anything like that. This came about not simply the lot averaging using the power lines. That was a subset of the core problem. The base problem was the citizenry reacted, and rightfully so, that when a presumed 10,000 square foot development became an 8,000, and an 8,000 subjected to lot averaging became a 6,400. That was the reaction. This was just the vehicle that allowed that to happen, the use of the power lines. If you listen to Commissioner Damon Mabey's testimony, who was present when this was first brought in, his great fear was that this would be abused as we have seen it recently. Now, I certainly have no argument with builders being allowed to make some adjustments to allow some finite number of lots under the maximum size to maximize the use. That makes sense to me. But what I don't want to see, and what the citizenry reacted to, rightfully so, was what I just described. 10,000 becoming 8,000 becoming effectively 6,400. So I would stand in support of the recommendations from the Planning Commission, because I think if we take them out, we've essentially watered down the solution so much that it doesn't become a solution.
Commissioner Shaw, you got something?
You do have 2 public testimony as well, just so you're
Oh, that's right. This is a public hearing. So before we do that, I'm going to open the public hearing. And we have Mr. Gifford and James Adkins.
Mr. Mayor, City Commissioners, my name is William Gifford. I live in Oregon City. We've got a lot to discuss here. The majority of the codes I don't have any issues with whatsoever, except the lot averaging part. I'm concerned that this was a solution to not a clearly defined problem. I think that Commissioner O'Donnell tried to address it as succinctly as possible. However, referring to a few people that didn't like houses smaller than theirs across the street from them is hardly the citizenry. It's a few vocal citizens. I think the city at large is concerned about the fact that we have a housing shortage. And to reduce the number of possibilities of houses is not going to serve our community well. I think that the old cliche of if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I'm not saying it ain't broke, but I don't think it's broke as bad as this solution is trying to make it appear. That the reason for that old cliche is because of unintended consequences. And one of the unintended consequences is going to be the inability of small developments to be able to maximize their opportunities of providing housing opportunities for our community. So I would rather just leave things the way they are, although I think that Commissioner Ide had a valid point. If we can take that, the power line right away out of the formula, I think it would serve everyone very clearly, and leave the rest of the code as it is.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Atkins.
Hello, Mayor Holliday and City Commissioners. My name is James Adkins. I'm here on behalf of the Home Builders Association of Metropolitan Portland. We're at 15555 Southwest Bangi Road, Lake Oswego. And I would concur with just about all that Mr. Gifford had to say, and Commissioner Ide's proposal of retaining the code as it stands while also allowing for the change of the power line easement not being considered in the lot averaging. As it stands, it's extremely useful for an efficient use of land by builders. It encourages a variety of housing sizes and prices. I think what was described in the staff report was that due to just basic constraints of lots, you're actually ending up with much, much larger homes and fewer homes than as allowed under this code. And it really does, as Mr. Gifford said, it retains needed housing in the midst of a housing crisis. And I'd also like to address some of the assertions that I heard. I was there at the public hearings, previous public hearings. The current code does not allow a loophole for developers to cram as many houses as they can into certain developments. It does not create micro lots. It does not exceed the allowable density. It does currently prevent inefficient and possibly wasteful use of land. And it also provides needed system development revenue for the city through the efficient use of that land. And I would say that it also helps protect the investments of longstanding Oregon City residents who have purchased land long ago and are looking to increase the economy of the city by building homes on their land. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Debbie DeRusha, if I didn't butcher that last name too badly.
That's the way most people say it, DeRusha.
Okay.
Can I assume?
So name and
Sorry.
city of residence for the record, please.
Debbie DeRusha, I live in Oregon City.
Okay.
I wrote a letter.
I think we've all read it, right?
Okay.
Yes, we have.
Okay.
Okay. I wasn't prepared to speak, but I just have a few things based upon what has been said so far. I understand that people can be upset about what goes in next door to them. We've been residents since 1993. We live across from Ainsworth Estates, and when we moved in, we had 4 houses in our neighborhood. And I assume you all know what that neighborhood looks like now. And as I see the developments go up on Myers, and I understand there's complaints from folks in other developments that have gone up all over the city, what's bothersome to me is that people can move into developments and have the nice place that they want to have, but they've moved into a development on somebody who is their neighbor, and now their development's going in next to them, and they want to complain about having those neighbors, and I just don't understand that. I'm just going to leave that one there. And I also recognize if you think you have an R8 next to you, and you all of a sudden have a 6,400 square foot lot next to you, what that says to me is that that person doesn't understand that that rule already existed. They don't understand the code. They didn't know the code. Not that they should know the code, but a 6,400 square foot lot they're not doing anything wrong. And then back to a comment that Laura made, or I read maybe in the history of lot averaging, maybe I read that today. It was designed to create a nice a lot here, a smaller lot, a bigger lot, so that you don't have all super nice, rich neighborhoods, and then you have the poor neighborhoods. That was the intent, was to allow mixed pieces of property. And then lastly, the gentleman who just spoke, I appreciated his comment about long-standing Oregon City residents, because we've been here since 1993. And we have kind of a little corner of our neighborhood where we have a couple of adult care homes. We've built a new house. We bought adjacent land to us that had an older house on it. And we need that lot averaging to be able to put houses there. And so my investment is wrecked if the 10% happens.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Last, we have Brenda Martin.
Thank you, Mayor. I started this at the beginning, so I wanted to, Brenda Martin, sorry, Hazel Avenue. What I want is transparency, that's it. If someone's saying they're getting R10s or R8s or R6, I'm not opposed to that. When I moved in, that wasn't the zone. When I moved in, that property wasn't even incorporated into the city. So, and it was zoned R10. And so I thought, oh good, they're gonna be building. I knew someday they'd build, and I'm not against them building. I'm just saying, if a builder comes in and says, I want R8, the majority should be R8. If you looked at our last subdivision that we lost on, that you guys voted against, that's not what we got. The majority of them are not even R8. So that was, I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public testimony? Then I'm going to close the public hearing, and we'll back to discussion. Commissioner Shaw, did you have something?
Well, I continue to be the historian here, I guess. So I was on Planning Commission before lot averaging.
1940?
Yeah. But at that time, it was all variances. And that was a lot of work for that department. And so we were all happy to see lot averaging come in. So I don't think anybody's really against lot averaging. So for myself, I have, after going through all this and listening to everybody and myself, I don't know why we can't use the current language that we have. You know, is it gonna make one lot difference here and there? It's not really worth to change the code for that, I don't think. So I think the existing language is fine, and leaving the calculation out for the power line easements is also correct. And yeah, that's it.
Do you have something to say, Commissioner Mengelberg?
I agree with Commissioner Shaw's comments. I would like to keep the 20%, and I'd like to take out the power line easement. I think that's a fair compromise to the recent situation and to the concerns of the smaller lot owners.
I'm going to offer not a compromise, but a suggestion that we have coming up a whole long, drawn-out process about equitable housing and all of those kinds of things. And a decision on this could negatively affect what happens down the road with, equitable housing and being able to have enough, places to build in the future. I would suggest that we table this piece of this code amendment until after we've gone through the equitable housing thing and had some more discussion about those kinds of things.
Are you saying to just take out the lot averaging from the current code amendments?
That we table the lot averaging piece until we've gone through the equitable housing study and whatever that. Laura, could you give us a brief outline of what that is all about?
Yes, thank you. We're currently working on an equitable housing project. The city received a $100,000 grant to look at housing options within the city. We have put together advisory teams. I think they've met 3 times. So we have a wide spectrum of our community to take a look at housing options and see what is palatable for Oregon City. You're going to see us continue to meet as a group, and then we anticipate it going before the Planning Commission late summer, fall-ish. So the purpose of that is, again, to look at all housing options, including processes, but also what are our code supply side options for housing.
So is that a reasonable?
I'd like to go on the record.
Go ahead.
What's the current state of lot averaging? What is the limitation on the number of lots that can be reduced?
There is not a limitation on
None
them.
whatsoever.
No.
And that is the issue. There's absolutely, I'll address the 3 speakers, knowing that some have a vested interest, for example, the builders group. But understand this, there was absolutely no lack of clarity as to why we pursued a solution to this. It is simply because there is absolutely no limitation on the number of lots that can be reduced. I don't think anyone is opposed to allowing a certain number of reductions to work with the builder. We don't want to characterize a development as an R8, only to have it be less than that. The removal of the power lines is certainly a good first step. I understand the position of those that say their investment is not protected. But let's be realistic. How much lot averaging can you do when your total possession is 8,000, 10,000, or 20,000 square feet? How much lot average does that give you? Not very much. If you lose a lot, you lose a lot. Is an investment protected? Who in here has a 401k like me that does not know the future value of it? There's absolutely no protection on an investment. The only protection available now is to take action under the existing laws. If you feel that the future is uncertain, develop now. So there's no guarantee, and I watched the Planning Commission. I think there's some misrepresentations as to how their position was portrayed. They stated simply that they stated what I'm saying now. There's no guarantee as to the future value of your investment. Infill, I don't know how much we're going to gain when what you've got is an 8,000 square foot lot or a 10 or a 20. The focus was on major developments that changed the whole character of their development by starting as 1 critter, an 8, and turning it into a 6. I don't think anybody has an argument with downsizing a certain number of lots. I don't even think anybody has an argument with variety in housing making an attractive neighborhood. The small development argument, I struggle with that simply because of the lack of available square footage to average. So I understand the position of each of the speakers. but I also understand that, I want everybody to understand there was no lack of clarity. And I feel failing to move forward on this, and I know I'm in a losing position once again, but failing to move forward on this is being unresponsive to the community. So I would be amenable to using the suggestions that were made, and if we need to do some negotiation in between those two, but I certainly would not be amenable to simply going and removing the power line easement. My vested interest is in the quality community. I understand we have commitments to providing housing, but we're not the only community in this county or this state. And let's not be a standalone island. So those are my statements. That's why I hesitate to put it off, because for as long as we put it off, these kind of developments will continue. And people will get them in under the wire, under the law in effect. And we understand the goalpost law. Whatever's in effect at that time counts. The same advice I'm giving small lot developers. So I know the way the vote's going to go. I just wanted to state my opposition to it. And when people don't want something to happen, they say there's lack of clarity. Read the record. Watch. This is not a single incident. This is a situation that exists citywide. Having said that, I'm on the record.
Okay.
So
Move forward as you will.
A question, Frank, are you then proposing you're approving the proposed language that staff has brought forward?
I would go with what the Planning Commission said. If that's not amenable to the balance, I'm certainly not in agreement with essentially going back to what we had with simply the addition of eliminating power lines. So I'm willing, if we need to negotiate further, I'm willing to look at that. But just taking out the power lines, knowing that there's other things that are not included, like wetlands, those already are disallowed. But that's not a sufficient solution.
So Frank, would you be open to the idea of 20% instead of 10% less than the zoning designation? Or are you wanting the 10% as well?
20% of the houses can be under the size and under by 20% of the amount?
So up to 25% of the lots may be up to 20% versus 10% less than the zoning. The 20% is what we have now.
Well, now we're just bantering numbers about, if I threw numbers about, I say 20% can be undersized up to 20% under. But that's just my quick and dirty solution. I think there's some number in between the two that if we have to agree on something other than what's proposed tonight, I think that has value. I understand that there's a time when the place I moved into was a berry field behind the guys next to me. I get that. I'm just trying to be respectful of the people that are already here and respectful of those that want to be here.
And that is why I continue to make the suggestion that we move this discussion through the process of the equitable housing study, because there are a lot and you're going to gain a lot more information from a lot more people in a lot of different situations before we, make a final decision on this.
And my thought is when we tie the two together, we probably lengthen the decision period on this particular item. Do you feel that's?
Oh, there's no question that you're going to do that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to deal with this as a discrete issue and then deal with equitable housing as it comes up. If you feel that making a decision on this negatively affects equitable housing, then please say so.
And we could always adjust it again after the equitable housing report.
I'd be amenable to having that consideration in the future, but I think there's an immediate consideration that's respectful of our people here and realizes the realities of what is lot averaging and how is it affected by the available square footage that you have. Small developments, piecemeal versus large 40, 60, 100 lot developments.
This horse is dead. So does somebody want to offer a motion?
Well, I think, it sounds like there's probably consensus on taking out the power line easements.
Certainly.
Okay, so we're all in agreement there. So then if you broke this down into, is there any discussion worth having on what percentage a lot can be reduced? Right now it's 20%. Do folks feel 20% is appropriate? And you're right, or if you'd like us to bring something back that would help you with this, just trying to see where there's agreement here and where there's not.
I think that there's agreement on what you just said, that to remove the power line easements from the calculation, that appears to be agreement. And if we just did that, made that one change, and then the discussion would be, would move forward into what you're talking about, Mayor, and with the equitable housing study that's going on.
I'm okay with that.
I would be more in
So-
favor of a 20%, 2020.
So
And
put
that
it,
could be discussed throughout this process that's up and coming.
And that would be subject to change depending on the inputs on
Exactly.
equitable housing. But I mean, I'd like to take some positive step now instead of simply removing the power lines. That's not a major step.
So Frank, are you proposing then up to 20% of the lots, maybe up to 20% less than the zoning? Is that what you're comfortable with?
Well, I need to give some ground to be reasonable. I'm willing to do 20/20. I mean, that gives you a nice mix in the division. Say in a 100-lot division, you get 20 out of the 100 that are smaller.
and it maintains the existing 20% reduction in lot
does.
size.
Yep.
So that would not change.
Right.
It should make everybody, it seems like a reasonable solution where it gives you a nice mix in the neighborhood. It doesn't change the complexity or the appearance of the neighborhood, essentially changing a higher R value to a lower one. And it's subject to further review depending on future inputs.
If I could, Laura, what, do you actually think that the equitable housing study is going to influence these subdivisions that are outside, that what we're looking at, all these subdivisions are outside, close to urban renewal or urban growth boundary? And equitable housing, what do you think that's going to look like? I mean, are we talking about changing the zones to 3.5, or I'm trying to see that relationship. What's that, you know?
The equitable housing discussion includes talks of options for housing and zoning designations. It includes looking at what the requirements are for like cottage housing in single-family zones and those density requirements. It also takes a look at, you know, what are the menu of options and what's appropriate for Oregon City. They've talked about are duplexes okay on corners. That's not looking at the density. So yes, it will affect the number of homes on properties. It will affect density. Right now, they've gone through the list of opportunities for the city, and now they're working on streamlining those. So putting all those options together, and then what does it look like, as opposed to going through one by one, and is this an option the city is interested in or not? So it will certainly affect how many homes are in the city, all over the city.
All over the city?
Yeah.
Okay. So you could actually have cottage homes button up right against the urban growth boundary. Could be coming in, okay. Well, I would be for continuing this and to see that. But that would mean also that our existing language would continue until we had this.
Would you be amenable to going ahead and doing that power line easement?
Yes.
And I'll restate, I feel that the current situation with no constraint on the number of lots that can be reduced in size, we need to be responsive to that. And I feel that taking the action of simply agreeing with the power line easement is insufficient. And I put forward the 2020 position again, with the position that if we want to review it in terms of equitable housing, we can. But my goal is to attempt to satisfy all user groups in a reasonable manner. Nobody's going to get everything they want, but at least you get some of what you want. And that's the nature of compromise, knowing it can be reviewed again.
So specifically on the lot averaging piece of this, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion that we adopt the 20% maximum number of lots that can be reduced to a maximum of 20% reduction of lot size.
And the power line easements?
And the power line usage is it's omitted from the calculation.
Second.
Further discussion? Call roll.
Commissioner Shaw,
No.
Commissioner Mengelberg,
Aye.
Commissioner Ide,
No.
Commissioner O'Donnell,
Aye.
Mayor Holliday.
No.
Could we take a quick, do you have those maps?
A quick what?
Just want to show you a couple of quick maps real quick. Just trying to help with the conversation here.
I have some, sorry. We have some examples from subdivisions that we worked through with the Planning Commission as well. This is subdivision Lindsay and 2. The zones are 6. You can see in each of those orange triangles with the proposed code language, there was an additional lot obtained. So with the lot averaging, there was 5 more lots with that subdivision. Under the proposed code of the limitation of only a quarter of the lots can be 10% less, it would result in less lots on site. You can see that where there used to be 2, there's only 1. So the purpose of the code amendment was to allow lots in constrained areas, specifically where streets come in is mainly where you see this when you have a property in these confined areas. Here's another example, which is Central Point Crossing. So it's an R8 zoning designation. So it was 27 lots with an average lot size of 8,208 square feet, so quite a bit higher than 8,000. Here is, you can see on the table what the lot sizes ended up being. But again, this was an R8, so you see the percentage that are less than 8,000 square feet and the larger lots that are carrying those average as well. Smallest.
Lord, interrupt you. Let's
Yeah.
call attention that the smallest lot is not 20% under 8,000 square feet. Smallest lot is 7,072 square feet, so essentially 11% less.
Yeah, and only 2 of the lots are more than the 10% in this scenario as well.
And let's also understand, we're trying to apply something to a subdivision that has already been designed, rather than having this information up front and possibly maximizing it even under a different set of rules.
Exactly. We're just
Okay.
kind of showing what we've seen in the past.
Okay.
Here's another one, Adeline Acres, which is a 2014 subdivision, zoned R8, so 8,000 square foot minimum. We see this average lot size is 8,127. And you see the layout there. Here's the lot sizes that you see. So again, it's in R8. You can see the number of lots that are under 8,000 there. The smallest lot is 20% smaller than the average, and the number of lots more than 10% over are 9. So there's a higher percentage under, between that 10 and 20% was part of our discussion as well.
So this is pretty close to the one we made a decision on. As far as, you know, the smaller lot sizes are down at 6,400 and.
Because of the odd shape of that
right,
lot.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're seeing these really, the configurations. That's a hard part, is designing a subdivision that meets lot width, depth in these strange spaces with streets going where they need to go.
Well, we also have to remember that, you know, Oregon City isn't, you know, flatland Nebraska where everything can be laid out in 1 by 1 mile squares and then chopped up. I mean, you know, we have a lot of other constraints, you know, whether it's topography or the existing, you know, buildings that are already here and all those other kinds of things. So I'm just real hesitant to do anything more to discourage the most efficient use of the land that we have for building in Oregon City.
I don't think we'd be discouraging it. I think we'd be encouraging those people who want to come here to be more creative. And again, creativity starts with a clean slate, not trying to apply it after the subdivision is designed. I like the idea of a subdivision with a variety of housing. I don't like the idea that we approve an R8 and it becomes an R6400 in effect. That's the part that I don't like, that there's no constraint on the number of lots that can be reduced.
I certainly understand your point. Is there another motion on the law averaging issue?
Yes. So count me out here. Let's see. I need my.
It's right here if you can see.
So my motion would be to retain the code as it is now, but to remove the power line easements from the calculation of the net deplorable area.
Second.
Further discussion? Call roll, please.
Commissioner Shaw,
Aye.
Commissioner Mengelberg,
Aye.
Commissioner Ide,
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell,
No.
Mayor Holliday.
Aye.
It passes.
Okay, so that's just one piece of the larger discussion. And before we move on to that, I am offering a walk-on. A couple of weeks ago, I had a constituent call me. They are a business up in the, off of Fur Street. It's Optimized Technologies. They are a federal Homeland Security contractor. And one of the things that when Homeland does their annual security reviews of facilities, they've been having some issues with transients and needles and all kinds of things, and they wanted to put the Homeland is asking them to put a fence around their facility. They came to the city, and the city said, yeah, you can put up a fence, but you can't use chain link. It's got to be, you know, wood or, you know, wrought iron or something else. And so they called me, and I went up and I took a look around, and I, for the life of me, couldn't understand, because when I drive down First Street, literally almost every facility on First Street, and as it turns to go down, has a chain link fence. So I'm proposing that we, it's paragraph 21 under building materials, paragraph B, for chain link, this is under prohibited materials, chain link fencing except for temporary purposes, construction site, refuse enclosure, stormwater facilities, or property, I'm adding this, or property within the general industrial district. So we'd allow a chain link fence around a company like Optimize or General Distributing or any of those guys that currently up there have 8-foot chain link fences, but they're being, because of this code amendment that happened in 2009, these folks are being prohibited. And I personally think that in a general industrial area, it's not too shocking to be able to say that you should be able to have, you know, a fence to protect your property, because very often you have, you know, equipment, trucks, all kinds of things that you want to be able to protect inside the area that you can't put in a building. Any discussion, question?
I think normally fences are intended not only for security, but also for screening.
Right.
And so some people think chain link fences are kind of ugly. And so if you add slats, you make it more attractive and you reduce the visibility into the yard. And that was probably the intent of the code, but maybe Laura can explain.
Yes, the Planning Commission wanted to raise the design for fencing in the city, and so there was that provision that precludes chain link. The provision, just to be very clear, so 1762-050 was the first part of that, and it limits fencing when it's visible from the street. So in the back part, you would still have it, and there's still a provision that outdoor storage in general industrial has to be screened as well.
That's only on the front.
Anywhere there's outdoor storage has to be visually screened, so they would have to do, if the chain link fencing was in the back of an industrial site, they would have to have slats or something on it already. The provision is just from the street, can you see fencing? If so, it can't be chain link.
So it can be chain link, but with slats.
In the back.
In the back, but in the front, it's iron.
Wood, it could be, you know, farm fencing, anything but chain link.
Okay. And the side side yard, again, if it's visible, would have to be anything but.
Correct.
Invisibles from the public right of way.
I get what the planning commission was trying to do. I think sometimes government oversteps its bounds when it says that, because this certain number of people think chain link is ugly, we're just going to forbid it from being used anywhere. We're talking about a general industrial area. Very few people drive down First Street looking for something beautiful. Most of them are driving down First Street to get to work or to go home from work. And I think it's, especially these folks who are providing, many very good paying jobs, to ask them to have to, spend $100,000 to do fencing when you could do it for $20,000 in chain link is, I think, an unreasonable. And again, I'm only talking about in the general industrial district. In commercial districts and residential districts and all the other districts, it's still, you're still going to have the ban on chain link.
But we have to look at what does this, it's just not for optimize. What happens like on our new industrial lands up on Beaver Creek Road?
Yeah, but those aren't going to be a general industrial district, are they? Those are going to be light industrial, which is a different category.
We haven't set the zoning yet for Beaver Creek concept plan, but yes, it'll be probably a employment industrial. General industrial within the city is located on First Street, and then there's also some piece near Clackamas River Drive.
So the stuff down between Clackamas River Drive and the river.
Yeah. I just don't want to set a precedent here.
I'm with you.
Okay? That's one, because a lot of times we come up with these instant ideas here, and we got to watch them and we'll walk them through down the road here.
I understand, but again, it's limited to those two areas, First Street and the area down, would be north of 213 and east or west of Clackamas River Drive.
And Tri-Cities, sorry, that's the other one, property.
Tri-City
is also zoned general industrial.
All right. So I don't have
Tri-City Fin Control or Tri-City the wastewater treatment plant?
Treatment plant.
Yeah.
Okay.
I haven't had the chance to view it. I'm getting a little bit more conservative about unintended consequences. I'm probably not prepared to take a vote on it personally. And if we do, I'll probably abstain.
I can come back at another hearing with two options, one with the allowance of chain link fences in general industrial, I understand what you're saying, and then one without, and you guys can sort of pick which go.
I'll be fine with that.
Yeah, let's do that, Laura.
All right.
Thanks.
So, moving on, then, does anybody have any issues with any of the rest of the code amendments that were brought up tonight? Then can I have a motion to approve?
Continue file L1704 to April 18th.
What was that?
Continue file L1704 to April 18th.
So we can do what?
Then I'll give you the two options for the code.
For the fence.
Can we not break that out and have it come as a separate item?
No, because it's noticed as one file.
All right. So is there a motion to continue?
Move to continue.
File L1704 to April 18th.
File as presented there. Yeah.
Second.
For discussion, call the roll.
Commissioner Shaw,
Aye.
Commissioner Mengelberg,
Aye.
Commissioner Ide,
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell,
Aye.
Mayor Holliday.
Aye.
It passes.
Okay, so on to general business, PC 18-047, second reading of ordinance number 18-1003, LE 17-02, legislative amendment to adopt the McLaughlin-Kenema Trail Plan, amending the Transportation System Plan, Trails Master Plan, and Parks Master Plan. Ms. Turway.
Thank you very much. The City Commission has already approved the first reading of this ordinance. Staff is just asking that you approve the second reading of ordinance 18-1-003. This is from McLaughlin to Kenema Trail. As you remember, in the first version, there's the permanent trail alignment and the temporary trail alignment. They're both on McLaughlin Boulevard.
Is there a motion for second reading, final adoption?
Move and second,
Okay.
then a read.
I'll move to approve second reading of ordinance number 18-1003.
Second.
For discussion, you have something, Bill?
Just getting ready to read.
Go ahead.
Ordinance number 18-1003, an ordinance of the City of Oregon City adopting the McLaughlin-Kenema Trail Plan and amendment to the Oregon City Transportation System Plan, Trails Master Plan, Parks Master Plan, and Comprehensive Plan.
Call roll, please.
Commissioner Shaw?
Aye.
Commissioner Mengelberg?
Aye.
Commissioner Ide?
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Aye.
Mayor Holliday?
Aye.
It passes.
18-177, Resolution 18-11, congratulating Downtown Oregon City Association for the Great American Main Street Award. Mr. Underwood.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to go ahead and deliver the entire staff report tonight because I feel like it's important to be explicit in describing the achievement that occurred recently, and I want to set a solid context for the viewing public. So, each year, the National Main Street Center recognizes exceptional Main Street communities whose successes serve as a model for comprehensive preservation-based commercial district revitalization with the Great American Main Street Award. Since the award's inception in 1995, over 90 Main Street programs have been honored. Great American Main Street Award winners represent the diversity of communities in the Main Street America network, small towns, mid-sized communities, and urban commercial districts from every region in the country. Recipients of this award must demonstrate exemplary achievement in the process of strengthening their downtown and commercial district. We are excited to report that the honor of the Great American Main Street Award has been bestowed upon our very own Downtown Oregon City Association for 2018. This is also the first time that any Main Street community in the state of Oregon has won this national award. Therefore, staff is recommending that the City Commission memorialize this occurrence by adopting a resolution congratulating Downtown Oregon City Association for winning the award and acknowledging their effort in achieving exemplary status as a great American Main Street. Any questions? And I think Jonathan is here to speak tonight.
Do we have the video?
It's queued up.
So, Jonathan, you want to talk before the video or afterwards? How about after? Okay. So, on to the videotape.
Roll the film.
We've been around since 1844. It's the oldest main street west of the Rocky Mountains. Downtown really was kind of a ghost town when I was growing up.
But now there's definitely new life, new ideas downtown.
There's been a lot of positive changes in the area, making the area a lot more family-friendly, a lot more walkable.
It just keeps getting bigger and bigger and growing more and more every day.
I don't think it was a question of whether Main Street was the right approach or not for downtown Oregon City. It's really about a holistic approach. It's looking at everything that makes a community vibrant.
Economic revitalization has been very important to us. We need to stand on our own 2 feet and make sure that we have a good mix of business here.
It's a great partnership. We all have the same thing in common, and that is we want to develop Oregon City. We want to bring new businesses into Oregon City. We want to create family wage jobs in Oregon City.
There's definitely room for more ideas. People love to participate in those kinds of processes.
Public visioning is a great way to do that. So get everybody in the same room and just let the ideas flow.
In terms of visioning and listening to the community, I think that's really strengthened the organization and taken them to a different level.
I think in the beginning, the events are what brought people downtown.
They're super creative with their promotional and marketing opportunities, doing things like the Oregon Trail Run.
People my age remember the Oregon Trail game from the 80s, and as you run this 5K, you actually play the Oregon Trail game. That event is definitely proven to be viral and engaging and something that the actual local community is very proud of.
The mill is downtown Oregon City. Now we're in the process of redeveloping that site, and so for the first time in over 150 years, the public will actually be able to get back out to Willamette Falls on the Oregon City side of the river.
Opening that up down there would be amazing. It's what the city needs.
The mill site is actually part of the original grid of Main Street. So it's really revitalizing and keeping that historical integrity together.
Downtown Oregon City is already awesome, and the future of the mill and the reconnection to Willamette Falls will make it even better.
downtown had always been identified as a blue-collar community. And so they came up with something called the Blue Collar Creative and began to attract creative talents to the downtown. Some of the early businesses were like Funnelbox.
And Funnelbox is a motion picture company, and they've spun off several other companies.
They really wanted that creative space, and now that they're here, they don't want to go.
They've created over 75 family wage jobs.
And I think one of the great things about downtown Oregon City is they've been able to attract first-time business owners.
When they come to Main Street, they know that they're going to be supported by the city, but specifically the Main Street program.
When we first started looking down here, we contacted the downtown organization and said, this is what we'd like to do. And we felt like we had somebody knowledgeable who had our back. This property needed every major system replaced.
We were able to help White Rabbit and Black Ink Coffee with a $60,000 grant.
Without the last grant, we would still be closed. I love the history. I love that people walk in and say, I knew this owner, I came and ate my meals here, and they already feel connected to the building, and I think I like that tie-in with community. So people walk in and we already have a connection.
When I come to downtown Oregon City today, it's dramatically different than the town that I visited in October of 2009. There's new businesses, there's a vibrancy. We're seeing the results of their years of effort, and it shows. It shows in the commitment, it shows in the people, it shows in the engagement. It's a wonderful place to be.
Okay, I wasn't sure. So my name is Jonathan Stone, and I'm the executive director, as the video showed, of the Downtown Oregon City Association. First off, thank you so much, Mayor Holliday, Commissioner Ide, for being able to attend the national conference. I hope you got a lot out of that in Kansas City. My first time.
Traveling.
Huh? A lot of traveling.
A lot of traveling.
Absolutely. We went. A few of us went out on Saturday and we came back on Thursday, so we were in Kansas, not Kansas, Missouri. They tell me the best part of Kansas is Kansas City, and the best part of Kansas City is in Missouri, and so that's where we were. That's what I've been told. I haven't spent any other time in Kansas, so. So the Great American Main Street Award, the video, it's amazing what they can take hours of footage and edit it down into. And obviously the Main Street, National Main Street Center was very keen on the contributions of the Downtown Oregon City Association to the revitalization of downtown Oregon City. And when I say revitalization, I mean revitalizing of, continuing to revitalize. But it can't be without the incredible effort and energy and investment that the city has put into downtown Oregon City. I want to thank you guys so much for your support of our program, but also the support of the Urban Renewal District and all of the tools that you guys have invested in, the Legacy Project. All of those are really key to the work that's been done, but also the work that we have to do. So thank you, and I just wanted to congratulate you guys on essentially winning the Great American Main Street Award. We can't win it again, so that's that.
What are you going to do now?
There's still more work to do, but.
All right, thanks, Jonathan. Any questions?
Thanks, Jonathan. Good job.
Just congratulations on a fantastic job. Very excited to have Oregon City on the map like this and for all of the great work you've done.
Sure, and I'll just add, I don't know the stats on the city's website, but in terms of the Great American Main Street Award announcement, the single most viral thing that has ever been posted to downtown Oregon City's social media, best I can tell. So in terms of organic reach, Oregon City and the surrounding community is very proud of this.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So
I'd just like to make one comment too, and really quickly. When I moved here in 2005, Main Street was dull and gray and cold. And when I go down there today, it is vibrant and it is warm and it is colorful and it is a place to be and an exciting, not just vibrant, but one of the things I heard at the conference was that if your downtown is healthy and doing well, the rest of the city will be as well. And so I think that that's a real true statement. So I'm ready to make a motion unless somebody else has something to say.
I think you need to make it.
Okay, so I would move that we approve resolution number 18-11, congratulating Downtown Oregon City Association for the Great American Main Street Award.
Second.
For discussion, call roll.
Commissioner Shaw,
You bet.
Commissioner Mengelberg,
Aye.
Commissioner Ide,
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell,
Yes.
Mayor Holliday.
Aye.
It passes.
You bet.
You betcha.
Yes, you are. Is there any, I'll take a motion for the consent agenda.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Call roll.
Okay.
Commissioner Shaw,
Aye.
Commissioner Mengelberg,
Aye.
Commissioner Ide,
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Aye.
Mayor Holliday.
Aye.
Passes.
Mr. Manager, have anything for communications?
An update from Ms. Turway?
Thank you very much. As you know, community development is the planning and the building departments, and we are located at 221 Malala Avenue, but not for long. We're moving. We're reinvested in our existing city facilities and the annex, which had good, strong bones, and that construction should be complete, hopefully, by April 16th, because we're moving on April 17th. And this is just a warning that we're moving. During the move, though, there's a bit of a transition because we're utilizing our existing office furniture and cubicles, so that takes a little bit of time to change. So we are going to be located here at City Hall, and for all of our customers from April 17th through 19th, we're going to be shacking up with development services. So you'll have one counter with all three departments. Our counter hours are going to be from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. during those 3 days. Then on that Friday, April 20th, we'll be closed. We'll be doing inspections as normal each of those days. And then on Monday, April 23rd, we'll open up at our new location, which is 698 Warner Parrott Road, and it is the annex at Mount Pleasant. But we'll call it something else when we move there.
The annex.
Yes.
Like the plan.
And we really appreciate the opportunity to find a place where we don't have to pay rent. My budget thanks you. It was a really good move. I'm sure Wyatt would thank us as well.
You're not charging her rent, Jim?
Gee, Jim.
We had an interesting conversation.
I think he owes her money now.
I know.
She was turning.
He gets
Perhaps. We'll see. No, it's nice that it's one city, one facility, so we could support each other. And call us if there's any questions. Again, inspections every day, limited counter hours, and we'll be at City Hall the 17th through 19th. And we will be having an open house in May after we unpack.
Anything else?
Just last real quick, Oregon City Brewing Company is holding a charity event in which $1 from every Oregon City Brewing pint, taster, soda, crawler, and growler purchase will benefit the Oregon City Library Foundation. So this will be Tuesday nights, Pints for Charity. So this will be Tuesday, April 10th, next Tuesday, 5 p.m. to 10 p.m., which is their close at Oregon City Brewing. So come down, enjoy our work session, and then meander down to the Oregon City Brewing. That's all I have.
Commissioner Shaw?
Yes, attended the county dinner in Tualatin. Commissioner Mengelberg and I were there representing Oregon City. And we got to talk about, well, we hadn't made it official that we'd won the Main Street Award yet, so we had to kind of just say, we're in the running for it, so that was pretty thrilling to talk about that. So attended South Fork Water Board and the CIC, and got to speak at the Hill and Dale Neighborhood Association last night. And Tower Vista, they've kind of combined there a little bit. So basically, it was a little update on what the city did in 2017 that I'd done at the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association, and now I did it last night for these folks. So, and lastly is you're going to see an op-ed in the paper here soon. I think Kristen's working on that. From OC Together, Mayor Holliday and I are going to be co-signing the op-ed for, they did they went in and to the compliance check for the dispensaries in Clackamas County, and Oregon City had 3, and there was 100% compliance for all the dispensaries they did in Clackamas County. So a little bit on OC Together, just make sure you know who these folks are. They focus on prevention and work to eliminate access, increased awareness on how alcohol and marijuana harm youth, and they encourage parents to talk to their kids, and they build youth knowledge of the effects of these substances. So anyway, Mayor Holliday, you'll probably get to see that. He and I are going to co-author the op-ed on that, so, okay.
Nothing to report. I just have a couple of quick things. Robin Schmidt, of the Father's Heart, she's the director. She wanted me to express her thanks to the city and city commission for extending the emergency resolution to allow their facility to be open nights due to the unusual cold this year. So she wanted to make sure that we knew she appreciated that. And want to invite everyone to the open house on Saturday, this Saturday, April 7th, from noon to 5 downtown on Main Street, all the way from the end of the Oregon Trail, all the way down to the mill, to celebrate our city's Main Street Award. And that's it.
And when am I supposed to be there?
11 to 6.
Check your email.
Okay. Okay. So I did go back and attend the Great American Main Street Awards. I flew in on Sunday night and flew back on Tuesday morning. So I spent more time in the air than I did on the ground, actually. But it was a great time, and it was exciting to be able to represent Oregon. There were people from cities from all 50 states there. To be able to stand up and say, you know, we're one of the best is a pretty big deal. On the other end of the spectrum, it has not been announced and it hasn't been in the paper yet, but for those in the know, Oregon City prevailed against the McLaughlin neighborhood and Mr. Buss in the lawsuit that McLaughlin had brought against the city as far as establishing whether or not the upper yard is a park, and the judge was very clear in her ruling that the upper yard is not part of Waterboard Park. So we consider that a victory. It's sad that we had to spend so much money to get to a decision that we were all 99% sure about, given that we'd used that site for 50 or 60 years. And I mean, I've lived here my entire life, and I never considered the area around the armory as anything other than industrial of some kind. So that's all I have. Is there anything else to go to the order?
Did you have anything?
She said no.
Okay.
Then we're adjourned.